releasing a book called How I Became the Liberal Leader. Step 1, got $10 billion to Brookfield. Step 2, question mark, question mark, question mark. Step 3, liberal leader. Liberals are going to fire Tait and restructure the CBC, so they're trying to save the CBC on their way out, I guess. I don't know. I still think I still think that the CBC has value, and instead of just defunding it, you should sell it. You should sell it. You should call it like I don't know what kind of name you'd come up with, but sell it. I mean, sell it, and maybe not necessarily the properties, but the brand itself, right? So there you go. I don't know. I think it has value, and you shouldn't just toss it in the dustbin and not try to extract that value, right? Like Petro-Canada got sold. You could sell the CBC. India has been telling Canada that we were importing gangland people and people with criminal ties, and Canada completely and utterly ignores them. And so that's interesting. I've got that video for you. That's the one of the Indian foreign ministers. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with corruption, liberal corruption, because it's unbelievable and really blatant, and they're trying everything they can to distract, right? And it's not really working, I don't think. Sarah says Liberal House leader Karina Gould is twisting herself into a pretzel, trying to claim that demanding the Trudeau government hand over incriminating documents to the RCMP to expose liberal corruption would be a charter violation. Listen to Andrew Scheer's response. It's good. This is 20 seconds, quick hit, and I think Andrew Scheer cuts to the quick of it. Here we go.
Every Canadian should be concerned about the fact that the first instinct of Conservatives is to suspend the charter rights of Canadians.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
The charter is there to protect the people from the government, not to protect the government from accountability by the people.
So there you go, Andrew Scheer trying to hold the Liberals to account, kind of, right? Here is Tracy, and she says, just out of order. We'll get to Tracy in a minute. Son of a Bench says Government House Speaker Karina Gould wants the proposed Conservative motion silenced and stopped. I agree this bill does raise some alarms as it bypasses parliamentary procedures, but the whole reason why there's this issue is because the NDP and Liberals have stopped debates, roadblocked inquiries, and adjourned committees. Gould goes on to tell Canadians that Conservatives are going around the Charter of Rights, yet it was the Liberals who used the Emergencies Act to tread all over your charter rights. And that's my basic premise. They're accusing the Conservatives of what they themselves are engaging in right now. And who does that, right? That's rules for radicals. That's communists. That's all sorts of, well, if you're in that world, that's how they operate, right? You accuse people of what you're doing in order to sow confusion, right? And so it's very interesting to watch this being utilized in Canada by our leadership. Here's Karina Gould, and she's talking about, I've got it queued up here to the middle of this thing, but she's trying to make the case that the Conservatives, in demanding these documents and giving them to the RCMP, that's a violation of Canadians' charter rights somehow, because it violates parliamentary procedure. But what the Liberals have done is totally above board, and they're protecting Canadians, and we just have to continue trusting them. I don't know. Here's Karina Gould.
Those extraordinary powers and extraordinary...
Too fast. I'm sorry. Too fast. Slow it down. Apologies. And it's a little quiet still.
Privileges to get around judicial oversight and to basically trample the charter rights of Canadians.
She's saying get around judicial oversight. Judicial oversight, like the foreign interference investigation that started with Johnston, who opened Confucius centers in Waterloo, and then ended with Hogue, who is not going to tell anybody who the Chinese traders are. Getting around judicial oversight? What judicial oversight?
They have the power, and it is confirmed, and Parliament has extraordinary powers to be able to compel documents. That is something that is agreed upon. But what they are...
It's agreed upon, but the Liberals have not given those documents over, and that's a problem. And they're not going to give those documents over because of this reason.
Doing for the first time, unprecedented in Canadian history, is compelling documents not for the use of parliamentarians, but to give directly to our federal police, to the RCMP. Now, there's a reason why the RCMP normally and have the responsibility to get a search warrant or to get a subpoena or to go to a judge to get information.
CSIS has been leaking that there's Chinese traders in the government. there's all sorts of documents that the Conservatives want to investigate and find out the answers to the questions they've been asking, and Liberals have been stonewalling. So it looks like there's criminality. It looks like there's lots and lots of smoke. And if you agree that the House can compel documents, it doesn't matter what the House is going to do with them. You give it over to the person in the House, and the House says, okay, now I'm going to take these documents and I'm going to walk over to the police station and hand them to the RCMP. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If there was nothing there, the RCMP would say, thank you for the documents. Doesn't appear to be anything here. Like,
from Canadians, because they are bound to protect the charter rights of Canadians, and if they're going to suspend those rights, they have to have the authority to do that.
Mental gymnastics.
What the Conservatives are trying to do is to say that they are going to use the extraordinary privilege and power of Parliament to go around those very necessary and correct judicial oversight.
I think it's weird that she's basically making the case they should get a warrant, and we've got public disclosure of impropriety. We've got all sorts of evidence from the Larry Brock and Michael Cooper, what's his name? Michael B. Barrett. And so there's all sorts of evidence. There's all sorts of concerning things that have happened already. And the RCMP hasn't done a damn thing, by the by, with all of that being disclosed, right? And maybe the real criminality stuff is hidden in these documents. Larry Brock seems to think there's been lots of criminality. So it's interesting that the RCMP hasn't done anything with what we've seen publicly already. But the fact that she's saying, like, get a warrant, yo, weird, right? Like, you'd think that the government, most transparent government in history, would be fine with their police force investigating their backroom deals.
Mechanisms to go around the charter protected rights of Canadians. And now they are saying, oh, well, we're not telling the police what to do here, but we're giving them the documents. Well, that is completely inappropriate, and it is a complete abuse of power, and it is something that should not happen in a democracy.
Neither should the NDP and the Liberals working to shut down investigations and committees and things like that. And so tit for tat, right? What happened last time something like this happened in Canada? Well, the government ended up quitting. Vesper says, here's a history lesson about corruption in Canada and how our broken system works. And no one is held accountable. Here's a history lesson from 1872 for all Canadians from our Commons website on Standing Order 23. This is what happens when a corrupt government gets cornered with no way out but to produce evidence of their own corruption. They run and resign. I don't know, man. They might just arrest the entire opposition. But we'll see. Historical summary, Standing Order 232. Between 1867, when this standing order was adopted, and 1873, that's 5-6 years, right? Like, that's not a short period of time. That's a long time. That's like 3/4 of the Liberals running the country. Like, it's a long time, right? Okay. It was alleged in April of that year that several ministers and government supporters received large sums of money from Sir Hugh Allen of Montreal during the 1872 election, with which the electorate had been bribed, in exchange for which it had been agreed that Allen would be awarded the charter for building the Pacific Railway. A few days later, the Prime Minister came to the House with a motion of his own seeking the establishment of a special committee to inquire and report upon the allegations. After several days' debate, the government resigned and a new administration was formed. So this appears to have happened in a short period of time. And then there's more. It says, before the government got caught in a bribery scandal in 1872, an investigation began and the government instead opted to resign. So yeah, that's basically the short story. So will that happen here? Or will they use powers of the Conservatives are mean racists and they say mean things and let's arrest them for doing that because that's terrorism? Will they do that? Because it seems like that's on the table and an option and one they're considering. Tracy says, now this is all part and parcel of the corruption. This is just a taste of the corruption, but it includes all the Arrive scam money, the 1 and 2 people companies who are getting millions of dollars out of the government. I'm watching Tulsa King, okay? And it's a good show. It's pretty good. There's not much, there's some woke stuff. Marijuana is the business that he's in, and there's some weird marijuana people who are woke, but it doesn't really come into the story. I try not to watch garbage. Anyway, his racket. So he's a gangster. He's been banished basically to Tulsa to by his family because they didn't like him, I guess. I don't know. And so his scam this season is getting into government subsidized wind farms. And that's the whole scam. He's like, well, it seems like the government's handing out all sorts of friggin' money and I should probably get in on all of that money. And so like, let's get in on this wind farm. And it seems like anybody who can milk the government for money, even gangsters in fictional television shows, think that's a pretty good racket, right? Like, and it's happening all over the place. And so in Canada, it's even a better racket. And if you are lucky enough to be elected minister, you could have a twin of yourself running your PPE company while you're managing the COVID response in government. Holy cow. What inside information could you provide your other version of yourself, right? Don't worry, we don't talk about it outside of work hours. So pretty incredible stuff. Tracy Wilson says, mega thread, confiscation, buyback spending exposed. On September 17th, Don Plett shared a government response to OPQ on buyback spending. Within the document we see a $9 million consulting fee to Samson and Associates. Who are Samson and Associates? I went to find out, says Tracy. On their website, they list a number of offices. Many are very close to me here in Ottawa, so I figured I'd jump in the car and see if they'd talk to me. Surely a company with over $9 million in taxpayer funding would have offices full of people who could answer a few simple questions. She shows up at a house. She says, I Googled the Ottawa office and checked the street view. Looks like a house to me, but who knows, right? Maybe it's an old image on Google. Maybe the house has been renovated into a cozy office space. Let's go see. She knocks on the door and an elderly couple answers. And he basically says, I work for them and it's for mailing purposes. They send mail here. Somebody comes and picks it up. That's it. You should go to Gatineau and ask the head office. So she goes to Gatineau. I'm just paraphrasing here now. She goes to Gatineau and it turns out Samson on here, nobody's there. She leaves a message. She goes to another one. She leaves a message like on a paper and a pen. And she goes to another office and it turns out that the other office is actually a different Samson. Like this is not Samson and Associates, but it's a different Samson. And it's like Samson Engineering, Samson Graphic Design. This is not Samson and Associates. So it's weird because there's $9 million in consulting and no real way to see what they're doing, no way to gain access to them or anything like that. Liberal corruption, and they're saying, oh no, it's Pierre Poilievre's fault and his mean conservatives. They want to get to the bottom of something by violating Canadians' charter rights. Meanwhile, right, they're handing out money to insiders and breaking all sorts of, if not direct laws, rules around fulfillment and all sorts of other stuff with regards to how government money is spent. And they're trying to cover the tracks. And that's what I think is going on, much more than the conservatives are being acting outside of their power or abusing their power by telling the Liberals that they're going to hand these documents over to the cops. So the Liberals just are trying to cover their butts. Alex Pearson. So let's talk about China very briefly, and then we're going to talk about the government. And then we got the docs to talk about, because holy smoke, the docs are a big deal too. Anyway, but not until Trump becomes president. Anyway, let's talk about China. Alex says the RCMP has proved to be utterly useless. No wonder organized crime is out of control in this country. Time for an anti-corruption unit, a big one staffed by no one in Ottawa. Global National. Andy Lee should be the head of that unit. That'd be fun. Global National says RCMP nixed a probe into suspected PRC, People's Republic of China linked money laundering network. Why? Why, you ask? Oh, no, good question. It's a great question. Because the criminals will just figure out a way around it, says the RCMP. We're terrible at our jobs. We are incompetent, said the RCMP leadership. And he just look at what look at any press conference that Brenda Lucki had. Totally incompetent, completely incompetent, and it's only gotten worse. And we know the criminals are ahead of us. We know the criminals can do anything they want. And if we investigate, well, there's no point because the criminals will be 10 steps ahead of us anyway. That's almost a direct quote. RCMP nixed probe into suspected PRC-linked money laundering network, Global News is reporting. The RCMP declined to investigate a suspected money laundering network connected to the People's Republic of China because the force determined that shutting down the scheme would have no significant impact. According to documents released by the Federal Foreign Interference Commission Thursday, the RCMP was made aware of a money laundering network that was connected to organized crime and PRC, foreign actor interference activity. Deputy Commissioner Mark Flynn, who's in charge of federal policing, testified that he made the decision not to pursue an investigation because it wouldn't make much of a difference. When asked if a financial crime unit could investigate the network, Deputy Commissioner Flynn queried what impact a successful financial crime investigation would have on the larger problem. A summary of his testimony read, "Yeah, we could take down those money launderers, but why? They'll just find some other way to launder the money. Because multiple backup networks could be used for money laundering activities, it was felt that a successful financial crime investigation would have no significant impact. Deputy Commissioner Flynn ultimately refused the request because the proposed investigation was not sufficiently impactful to justify a higher prioritization. It was only one vignette of a larger issue of foreign interference in Canada, the subject of Justice Marie Hogue's federal inquiry, but it highlights two significant issues into how Canada counters the foreign influence threat: the connection between hostile powers and organized crime in Canada, and the lack of resources of federal authorities to develop or to devote to countering complex interference operations." So there's so much money laundering going on. It's so big, and I'm actually kind of bribed. So it's past my bedtime. See you later. Like, what? The whole thing seems crazy, right? Like, it seems absolutely insane. Here's even more. Police stations operating in Canada, Chinese police stations, you mean? We can't look into that either. Holly Doan reports, RCMP denies soft peddling treatment of Communist Party police stations used by PRC, People's Republic of China, to intimidate Chinese immigrants or emigres in Canada. So they're not doing anything about anything because it would be ineffective anyway. And also, don't worry about the police stations. I'm sure they're above board, right? In the US, people were arrested when they found out. And like, I think the stations were raided and all, like, shut down, the whole deal. In Canada, we're like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. Is it operating out of a Confucius Center in a university? Don't bother it. National Post says RCMP addressing concerns about the lack of foreign interference follow-up. Ha, right? Like, are they though? Are they? I don't think so. During closed-door testimony with the commissioner over the summer, Flynn said the RCMP had begun focusing on disrupting some foreign interference activities rather than developing cases for prosecution in court. I have questions about that. Is it ethical to identify suspected criminals and then instead of like targeting them for a criminal investigation, you start trying to disrupt their criminal network by what? Sabotaging their cars, right? Because haven't the RCMP done sabotage of big heavy equipment in multiple different, like during Freedom Convoy protests, as well as oil and gas companies, right? So I don't think that sabotaging cars and or activities of suspected criminals is outside of what the RCMP would consider their bread and butter, I guess. But the legality of all that, if you've not been charged and you've not been convicted by a jury of your peers, are you not innocent until proven guilty? And so if the police decide that you've committed a crime and you should be disrupted, your activities should be disrupted, and they start sabotaging you, isn't that the RCMP just targeting an innocent civilian, not building a case against them, and then terrorizing them? Like, I have a problem with this. I think this is a bad idea. Why are we letting the RCMP do this? You did what now? Holy cow. The RCMP needs to be abolished. These people need to be brought to heel good and quick, and probably scattered to a million pieces, right? Like, jeepers, creepers. Moving on slightly, we've got a grab bag of governance. I think it's going to be a fun one. David Mulrooney says Canada actively pondering the Australian nuclear submarine purchase, but now they've got this top secret cloud thing that's going on. Everybody's got a Google Drive invite, but not Canada. Like Australia, the United States, the United Kingdom. I think Germany's involved. There was another one, New Zealand maybe. Canada did not get the invite. France maybe also did not get the invite, but maybe France didn't need submarines. But now they've got this Google Drive thing going on, and it seems really strange because Canada doesn't have the capability to join in. And we've only now started thinking about it. Here's the quote from the article. It's a CBC article. The establishment of AUKUS, So this is Australia, United Kingdom, United States in 2021 blindsided the Trudeau government, which initially dismissed it as a deal to secure nuclear-powered submarines for Australia. It's more than that. It's a network. It's a whole network to share intelligence. So I'll just read it here. Australia is joining the United States and the United Kingdom in developing top secret cloud networks to exchange highly classified defense, national security, and intelligence data with each other. A concept Canada has just begun to think about. I think, like, this is the first I've heard of this. Everybody just begun to think about, like, nobody's looked at Google and said we should have a secure way to share these things between countries. How do they share the Five Eyes stuff? Interpol? Experts say that unless the gap is closed quickly, Canada's lack of such digital infrastructure will have a profound impact on new military hardware the federal government has committed to purchasing, since such as the F-35 stealth fighters, MQ-9 Reaper drones, and long-range P-8 surveillance planes. The gap is also putting Canada at a disadvantage in negotiations to become part of the high-tech portion of AUKUS, the trilateral defense and technology partnership involving the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The AUKUS nations are also part of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. New Zealand and Canada are the remaining partners. So the 3 out of the 5 countries in Canada's most important intelligence alliance are now exchanging highly classified information in secure cloud-based systems, which Canada has no access. Wah, wah. Right? Like, oh, guys, sorry, it's the No Canada's Club. Doh. So this made me laugh. And I was like, jumping tree to tree, where have I heard that before? And I figured it out, and I'm going to show you, and I think it's funny as heck. Kirk says, just when you think it would be impossible for Justin Trudeau to do this, he did it. He hit a new level of stupidity. Maybe he's just trolling us. Maybe somebody's counting this up. Did he say meow at all at any point in this speech? Here's Justin Trudeau talking about the Jasper fire. Here we go.
This fire, Mr. Speaker, was a treetop fire. It jumped from treetop to treetop and through flaming pine cones kilometers into ahead of it, which is what set this burn. This is a result of climate change. This fire.
So I was wondering, through my scroll yesterday, I was seeing all these flaming pine cones, and I was like, what is going on with the flaming pine cones? And so I saw this clip, and I was like, okay, now I understand the flaming pine cones. And I've heard the tree-to-tree thing before, and is he trolling us, for crying out loud? Have you seen Super Troopers? Here's a little bit of Super Troopers.
Thick, boy. Now, do you know how fast you were going? Now, what is so damn funny?
I could have sworn you said meow.
Do I look like a cat to you, boy? Am I jumping around all nimbly-bimbly from tree to tree?
No.
Am I drinking milk from a saucer?
No. Sorry. The tree to tree. That's all. I was like, I've definitely heard tree to tree before. Honestly, what is happening? What is happening in our world where Justin Trudeau is talking about flaming pine cones? Forest management was ignored completely by Stephen Guilbeault. There are emails. Here's one. New bombshell evidence, more proof that Minister Guilbeault's senior officials discussed cancelling planned prescribed burns in Western Canada months before Jasper burned. Newly obtained emails now reveal that this discussion was so alarming that the Executive Director of Conservation replied, begging Parks Canada to put forest management above politics. It's critical to continue these kind of burns, experts warns. Why was Minister Guilbeault's department considering cancelling forest management practices because of political optics? Was Minister Guilbeault directing this insanity? So Justin Trudeau is standing on the House of Commons floor saying, no, it was not forestry management that was the problem, despite these emails being public. It was pine cones jumping tree to tree, meow. And we have evidence that he's a lying liar, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it. Like, what can you do about it, right? So it's very interesting, but Trudeau is doubling and tripling down on his lies and rhetoric, and we've got evidence that he's a liar who depends on rhetoric to get his position moved forward. And so we should respond as if we know that the game that he's playing, right? Maxime Bernier says Canada is becoming a poop hole country. And here is a person. This is in Waterloo. This is down the street from me. Waterloo, Canada. These guys were maybe poaching salmon in the Grand. I don't think salmon are running in the Grand right now, but this is on the banks of the Grand River, and this guy's pooping on the side of the Grand River. And Maxime Bernier says Canada is becoming a shithole country. And I don't think he's wrong. People were responding to this yesterday, talking about how Waterloo's changed and all sorts of stuff. Crazy stuff, man. Crazy. Pierre Poilievre is talking about there is a police officer who was stabbed by a person who was released on bail twice after committing crimes. He was arrested initially after committing crimes, and he was released on probation. And then on probation, he committed more crimes and he was out on bail. And on bail, he shot the police officer in the stomach. And the Liberals are more concerned about calling this guy a dirtbag than they are about their catch and release policies. Here's a back and forth on the floor of the House of Commons. Pierre Poilievre finishes with, "What's wrong with you people?" And a lot of people like it. Here we go.
We see the case of the dirtbag Tibor Organo, who shot a police officer in the stomach yesterday while he was out on bail after having been arrested for 24 offenses he committed while he was out on probation. So let's get this straight. He's out on probation for many crimes. He gets arrested for violating probation, so he gets released on bail and shoots a police officer. When will this government finally accept that their hug-a-thug, catch-a-release system is putting our people at risk?
Mr. Speaker, our hearts go out to the police officer because no police officer should be hurt in the line of duty. But, Mr. Speaker, what is extremely concerning is what the Leader of the Opposition is doing in this House today, where he is trampling the charter rights of Canadians. Whether it is in this House, whether it is outside, Canadians need to be extremely alarmed about the fact that when it comes to their rights, his first instinct is to trample over them.
I think you have a charter right to get released after 24 offenses while you're already on probation and shoot a police officer in the stomach. I'm more worried about the charter rights of the police officer who's recovering from the gunshot. This is what the police officer said. Almost everyone we arrest is out on bail. No one stays in jail where they belong. The city and the feds just don't care. It just doesn't bother them. It doesn't matter how many die and if a cop gets shot.
That's right.
What's wrong with you people?
So, it says axe attacks, build the homes, blah, 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 right? So, that's going to resonate with a lot of people. A lot of people are going to like that. And yeah, it's interesting. But with Liberals, honestly, here's Patty Haydu. This is her response to that, calling what's-his-face a dirtbag.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've noticed over the last several months a real decline in the tenor of this House. It is disturbing to me as a member of Parliament to hear other members of Parliament use names and slurs towards constituents of all of ours. These are Canadians that we're talking about. And Mr. Speaker, when we're using names and calling each other names and calling constituents names, I think we can do better, Mr. Speaker. I'm a member of Parliament for Thunder Bay Superior North, and I'm immensely proud of the citizens in my riding, and I would never, ever consider calling any of them a name. Thank you for allowing.
Even if they stabbed a cop in the stomach? I mean, here's Ryan. Ryan's responding to Patty. Patty Haydu is angry. Pierre called the guy who shot the cop while out on bail a dirtbag. You can't make up this level of crazy. Yeah, that's pretty wild stuff. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful